I'm going to turn it over to Representative Mike D'Amico, a strong advocate for disability issues in this state and a good friend for all of us.
Thank you all for being here and welcome. And unlike Molly, I usually don't need a microphone, but I'll use it since it's here. So, welcome. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir because I look out and I see so many friends and so many advocates and so many strong supporters for the disability community. And I really want to thank you and congratulate you and give you kudos and well-deserved kudos for all the work that you have done over the years to keep the issues alive. And let's face it, our work, your work, will never be done. It will keep going because there will always be problems and there will always be new issues. So I encourage all of you to keep fighting actively and keep advocating as you have been doing for so many years. So I just wanted to thank the State Independent Living Council as well as the Connecticut Cross Disability Lifespan Alliance, the CCDLA, for putting this program together. I hope, as Molly mentioned, I hope you'll take a few minutes to check out the display right down the hallway in the second floor atrium, right nearby. Today, we really are fortunate. We're going to have at least three different aspects that we're going to examine here. We're going to get a historical perspective on the ADA and how it came to be. We're going to hear from current advocates who work, and that's most of you, who work at the local, state, and federal level to bring awareness of disability issues and to advocate for their implementation and for compliance with the law, and to expand on opportunities for people with disabilities. And we're also going to hear from people with lived experience, and perhaps that's the most important group of all to hear from. So I will not bore you with a history lesson. I will simply say that, as you're well aware, the Americans with Disability Act, the ADA, was signed into law 35 years ago this week by President George Herbert Walker Bush. It is a comprehensive civil rights law, and it prohibits discrimination based on disability. And it guarantees equal opportunities, or at least it's supposed to guarantee equal opportunities for individuals in several different areas. Yes, there was a point to that. It's supposed to guarantee equal opportunities regarding employment, state and local government services, public accommodations, transportation, and telecommunications. And I'm sure we'll hear from subsequent speakers today that those are lofty goals, but they are not always met, and that's why we have to keep doing the work. So you may know that subsequent to the ADA in 1990, the ADA Amendments Act was signed into law, which made significant changes to the definition of disability. And as I'm sure you're all aware, depending on how it's interpreted, somewhere between 20 and 25% of the population in general has some type of disability. And what we do, and we will continue to do, is make sure that people are aware of that and make sure that people don't sweep that under the rug. So these two laws, the ADA Act and the ADA Amendments Act, have had a profound impact on the lives of those with disabilities, as you're well aware. But history teaches us that passing laws and passing amendments does not do the job completely. As policymakers, as advocates, as administrators, we need to increase awareness of disability rights and impress upon people that, after all, disability rights are simply human rights and civil rights, and should be regarded as such. We need to work for the implementation of these laws, compliance with these laws, enforcement of the ADA law and subsequent legislation. And today's speakers, I am confident, since I know all of them, they will be happy to expand on that. In closing, I just want to say what I was taught by the members of the local group that I have become associated with. It's a group from Farmington, my hometown, the Citizens Coalition for Equal Access. And they have impressed upon me that rather than having disability issues be an afterthought, as they so often are, unfortunately, that we need to make sure that disability issues and disability concerns and disability rights are front and center when policymakers make their decisions. So I'm counting on all of you to make sure that these issues are front and center always. And I really thank you for the opportunity to speak. And now I'll turn it over to somebody smarter than me to talk.
Thank you all. Good afternoon. My name is Amy Porter, and I'm the Commissioner for the Department of Aging and Disability Services. It is great to see so many old friends and get to meet some new folks here today as well. I echo the good representative's thanks for the organizers bringing together people with disabilities, bringing together legislators, government folks, and advocates all together to commemorate the ADA. I'm pleased to be here with you today and to be invited to just have a role in this amazing commemoration. The ADA, as you know, is a landmark civil rights law, and it changed our country for the better. When it was signed into law in 1990, it reaffirmed a simple but powerful truth, that people with disabilities deserve equal access, opportunity, and inclusion in every part of life. At the Department of Aging and Disability Services, we do our best to carry those values forward every day, from programs that support older adults, promote independence, and ensuring accessibility for people with disabilities. Our work is rooted in the belief that everyone deserves to live with dignity and choice. So today we honor the advocates, the leaders, and the everyday people who make the ADA possible. And we rededicate ourselves to continuing the work that needs to be done during these challenging times. Because while we've made meaningful progress, there's still so much more to do as we defend the gains that we've made and we work together to build a stronger future. So thank you for being part of this important moment, for helping carry forward the promise of the ADA. And today let's have this as a reminder to keep moving forward and to do it together. Thank you.
Hello, I am honored and humbled to be here. My name is Cheryl Sharp. I'm an attorney and the Deputy Executive Director of the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities. We are the oldest governmental civil rights agency in the nation. And I stand before you to commemorate 35 years of progress that is attempted to be rolled back right now. This is a defining moment in the history of the United States. Are we going to stand together for equality and for equity and for peace and for tranquility and for transparency, and so that we, the people, are protected? That is the question that we must ask ourselves. And I work with a lot of young people, and I say to them, sometimes it's okay that you don't fit in, because we've been trying to fit in, right? As advocates, we've been trying to fit in. We want equality. We want everyone to be treated the same. But right now, fitting in is not enough. It is time that you don't fit in, that you stand up and stand for justice. So, in our agency, Our mission is to eliminate discrimination in housing, in credit transactions, in employment, and in places of public accommodation where we have been denied entry. And I say we because I'm talking about we the people. It doesn't matter if you have a visible disability, if you have a hidden disability, if you have no disability at all, or if you will soon be disabled. We the people have to stand up and we have to show out. Now is the time. Hate has been normalized. I always get cautioned, don't say too much about discrimination. But I am a leader in a civil rights agency. That's all I'm going to talk about. That's all I'm going to talk about. At this point, I'm much older than when I started my career 30-something years ago. And I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in my early 20s, and I had a case that made disability rights law so important to me. It was one of the first cases that I tried. It was one of the first cases that I had, and it was an individual who was wheelchair-bound, and he was a top performer in his place of employment. All they needed to do, the employer needed to have a table that he would sit at that had bricks under the table so his wheelchair could fit under. They wouldn't do it. A brick back then cost about 54 cents. And he did not have an accessible bathroom. So every day he would have to take his wheelchair apart when he got there. He'd have to roll the wheelchair under the table that he was sitting at with other people. And when he had to use the bathroom midday, he'd have to put the wheelchair back together, go down the elevator, go to his car, go home, use the bathroom. There was no accessibility. That was one of the first cases that I had as an early 20-something-year-old. That case made me mad. It made me resolute, and it made it so that I said to myself in that moment, I will spend the rest of my career, whether I end up having a disability, or I already have a disability, or I am someone who doesn't have a disability, none of that matters. Because at the end of the day, we are all people. And there are resources out there, right? So it's not just for us to rally together and to big up one another, but we have to do something, and we have to do something now. The urgency of now could not be more urgent, right? As our rights get rolled back, what are you going to do about it? That's what you have to ask yourself. What am I going to do about it? Am I going to sit silently, right, and lament? Am I going to mourn the loss of my rights and the rights of the people that I care about and love? Or am I going to stand up, understand the resources available, buck the system, make sure that I come to this legislature and I testify, that I call, that I send letters, that I send notes? That is what is required. You have to do what is required. I'm going to give you a quick example. Let me check my time, because as an attorney, you know we can talk. So what I can tell you, some of the resources, and we also have a resource table out there where the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities, also known as CHRO. And what I can tell you is that over this past several months, every year we process about 4,500 complaints of discrimination. And a substantial number of them are disability discrimination cases. But in the last few months, we have received more inquiries than we have received in many years prior. And in our regional offices, one in Hartford, one in Waterbury, one in Bridgeport, and one in Norwich. In our offices, it has doubled, in some places tripled, the number of complaints of discrimination and the number of inquiries that we are receiving. Hate has been normalized. Raise your hand if you want to be hated. Nobody? It's not a good thing, right? Raise your hand if you want to be loved. If you want to be protected. If you want to be respected. Hands up high. Hands up high. It's time to take action. It's not okay to know something is wrong, to know something isn't fair, to know that equality doesn't exist, to know that equity isn't available, that people are not getting the resources that they need to have a seat at the table, and to just say, oh, that's so sad. Or to even have meetings and talk about it and then do nothing about it. Stand up and show out. We are stronger together. And be not afraid. There's one of my favorite politicians, and I'm not crazy about politics, although you seem like a very good Representative Jasmine Crockett out of Texas, right? She said, I do not have the spirit of fear. Right? She's the child of a preacher. I don't have the spirit of fear. And let me tell you, I don't have the spirit of fear either. We are going to do what is necessary to make sure that individuals, whether you are a person with a disability or not, are protected under the law. So if you believe you're the victim of illegal discrimination, if you are not being accommodated in your place of work, in a place of public accommodation like a store, a restaurant, a school, contact our office. And I told you where those 4 offices are. If you go to the park and that something's not accessible, we need to know. That's how we fight to change the laws. And then once the laws are changed, we need advocates to go stand in their truth and to stand up against individuals. Again, I started with we the people, against other people who would tend to hold people down. We cannot be held, right? Unbridled. We have to be in order for things to change. So I come to you with a lot of energy but I also come to you in peace, right? And I want us to realize the difference between equity and equality. Raise your hand if you know the difference between equity and equality. Which one is more important than the other? Equity. Is it? Who thinks equality is more important? Anybody? Both. They're equally important. We need to be treated fairly, right? We need to be treated the same after the equity has kicked in, after we've been given the resources that we need in order to have a seat at the table or to stand at the table like I'm standing here and other people are having a seat at this microphone. However you come, it needs to be accessible so that you can participate. Now, I wish I could stay to hear the wonderful additional my colleagues here who are going to speak, but next door we have, because again, hate has been normalized, we're having an immigration policy panel because that is also a huge problem right now, right, in our nation. Mm-hmm. And Melissa, you said it best, who's next? If you think you're protected today, what's going to happen tomorrow? Who's next? Who is next? That's a question. I like to quiz, I'm the professor at heart. I should have just maybe gone into that as a profession. But who is next? Are you next? Am I next? Is a migrant worker next? Is someone with a disability next? Who's next and who should be protected? Who? Everyone needs protection. Everyone needs a cover. And the state law is broader, actually, than the ADA. And so while we commemorate this landmark legislation that is so important, understand that in Connecticut, the law is broader in that you only have to have a chronic condition under our law. Okay? And so we also take cases that are broader than the cases that could be filed federally. So while we may want to, under state law, in some way pull in the ADA, the law that we actually have in place by our legislators, who are progressive, more progressive than the federal government, protects us even more than the federal law. So let's give a round of applause to the state of Connecticut for being forward-thinking. Time check. only went a minute over. Thank you for listening. And our resource table is out there, so please, when this is done, come and pick up the pamphlets, the paperwork. We protect you in schools, and restaurants, and hospitals, and your place of employment, and housing when you're looking for a house, if you're not being accommodated once you get a house. All of that under this small umbrella in a state agency that deals with civil rights. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Marianne Langton. This is Marianne, and I have asked my personal assistant, Patty Ellis, that's me, to read what I have written for today. President George Bush signed the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, into effect on July 26, 1990. This was a significant celebration because it signified a movement for the civil rights of people with disabilities. I would like to briefly discuss what life was like before the law. People with disabilities could not access buildings because there were not any ramps, automatic doors, or accessible stalls in the bathrooms. I can tell you bathroom stories where I could not fit in the stall and had to be very creative. Therefore, people were limited in where they could go because of these barriers. I would like to share how the ADA has enhanced my life along with the lives of many other people. I worked for the Connecticut Council on Developmental Disabilities. The council had an obligation, according to the ADA, to purchase an accessible computer desk as well as a specialized computer mouse that enabled me to fulfill my duties and responsibilities. In addition, I was able to obtain health insurance because the ADA exempts people with pre-existing conditions with disabilities. One of my rewarding job responsibilities was being on the Emergency Preparedness for People with Disabilities Committee that was developed after Hurricane Katrina. The committee designed inclusive shelters for all people, including folks with limitations. The ADA set guidelines on how to develop accessible sleeping rooms for people with disabilities and their personal assistants or family. For example, the state purchased beds which were motorized to assist people with different needs. Signage was designed in Braille for the visually impaired, giving them instruction on where to go in the shelter. The signs were posted on walls where they were easily visible to all people. Since the ADA, I have seen public buildings become accessible so that people with disabilities can utilize them. I've seen the arts communities such as the Bushnell and Hartford stage not only become architecturally accessible, but they have trained their volunteers and staff to be sensitive to the needs of people with disabilities. I have found these volunteers to be eager to help move a seat or help take off my cape. It's very nice to go out to these places and have my dignity. Since 1990, the town of West Hartford, where I live, has made many ADA improvements. One of these improvements was curb cuts. This had not only helped me, but also helped people with walkers and families with baby strollers. Another major improvement was the crosswalks. How many people remember those crosswalk buttons with a pencil eraser sized button to push on and off? Now, buttons are enlarged and some are even touch sensitive, so they're easier to use. In addition, some of the buttons have voice instructions that assist the visually impaired. People should not underestimate their power of their own advocacy. There was a shop down the street from where I live that was inaccessible for the last 34 years. There were coffee shops that kept changing managements until bubble tea came in about 8 years ago. Everyone goes there, and there was a ramp that was installed just last summer. Patty and I went down last weekend to say, "Great job," and "How did it come about?" People advocated so much for that ramp that management finally listened. I thought this is a great story about how important people's voices can be. The ADA does still exist, but it is weakened by President Trump's administration, which withdrew 11 pieces of guidance in April. While the law itself remains the same, the removal of practical, non-binding guidance may muddle how businesses meet ADA standards. There's a possibility this could result in fewer accessible services, more legal disputes, and signs of declining federal enforcement. The next key question is whether the DOJ or future administration will release replacement guidance to clarify expectations. We must continue to fight so that people with disabilities will have access to much-needed civil rights. Therefore, a grassroots disability group has been formed that will closely keep their eyes on state and federal legislation. Please look for more information about this group in late August or September. And now we would like to lead everyone in a chant that goes like, ho, ho, hey, hey, ADA is here to stay. Ready? Ho, ho, hey, hey, ADA is here to stay. Ho, ho, hey, hey, ADA is here to stay. Ho, ho, hey, hey, ADA is here to stay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm a little relieved that I'm not the last one speaking because the bar has been set so high by the previous speakers. My name is Duprey. I know many faces around the room. I currently serve as the Deputy Corporation Counsel for the City of New Haven, although I'm here in my personal capacity. When Gretchen Knopf called me to ask me if I'd speak today, my heart sank. And it sank because these are very difficult times for people with disabilities. For years, I have gladly participated in the ADA anniversary events, marking incremental progress. This year was different. I said yes anyway, despite my initial reaction. Then the challenge became what to say. And I knew I'd be following Melissa, so that also scares me quite a bit. I think I need to start by giving you a little history. When the ADA was signed into law on July 26, 1990, I was a few weeks away from starting law school. I remember seeing the signing on the news that evening and thinking how great that was going to be. At the time, I had no intention of working in the area of disability rights, but I could recognize that I would benefit from it personally. In 1993, when the ADA went into full effect, I was graduating law school. By that time, I had decided to focus on employment law, where Title I of the ADA is king. At the time, I figured if the community works hard, the disability community, the ADA would be fully implemented within 15 years or so. I hadn't quite understood or equated the disability rights movement with the civil rights movement, because at the time, it had been nearly 30 years since the Civil Rights Act in 1964 had been signed, and yet there were still racial and gender inequalities. I hadn't recognized that it might take much longer to implement the ADA than I had anticipated. In 1998, I accepted the position with the City of New Haven, where I would serve as a director of the Department of Persons with Disabilities. I figured I'd do that job for 3 years or so. 22 years later, I was still doing the job. During that time, we had some successes and advances in disability rights, some failures too. I encountered some great helpers and allies, some in this building, some across the way, some down the street, and all over the state of Connecticut. But I also encountered a few detractors. Too many for my taste. Sometimes repeating the same battles over and over about why accessibility was important, why there needed to be ramps, why there needed to be sign language interpreters, why speaking to a large group without a microphone was not accessible, but we still had to keep making those arguments. So in 2019, I decided it was time for me to step away from disability rights movement after a particularly hard series of meetings with state leaders that were big detractors. In 2021, I was offered a promotion at the City of New Haven in the legal department, going back to my roots employment laws. So I took it. But make no mistake, even though my disability work is limited now, my just being at the table, in the room, at the courthouse, advances disability rights. Even if I am not talking about I'm not talking about disability rights or access. I'm there, and I'm proud of it. I've handed the reins of the Department of Services for Persons with Disabilities over to Gretchen Knopf, and one of the funnest things I've had to do in the past 5 years was call her on Christmas Eve and asking her if she would want to come work for the City of New Haven. So and we are so thrilled that she had come join us in improving New Haven and its accessibility. I tell you all of this background to lay the groundwork for what I'm about to say, because it is a part of the future success of the disability rights movement. It is easy for us to come to events like this, or to a disability protest here and there, but in all my years of addressing disability discrimination and advancing our causes, I've discovered at the heart of our progress is connection, involvement, and the needs of, in expressing the needs of our community through our leaders. Connectedness is not necessarily with other people with disabilities, but those without disabilities. And it isn't always about disability issues, but it is about all our community happenings. So go out there and be connected to your community, both in politics and not politics. More progress will be in access by joining local committees, local groups, getting out into the community, personally, electronically, but be known, be visible, show your disability, serve on commissions, join groups, join political party caucuses. For those that think that one party's politics is a party of the disability community, then that isn't always the case. I think there is an assumption that one party controls the issue. I argue that's not necessarily true always. Well, in these political times, under this particular administration, it is pretty stark that one party is eating away at disability rights issues. There have been many times in the past where some leaders in both parties either celebrated disability rights or diminished it. An example of that is I contend that Weicker and Rowland were our governors that were best on disability policy. And it somewhat pains me to say that as a liberal. But it is true. So if you're a Republican, Democrat, or other, get involved in that political process. not just disability issues. Maybe start small. Yes, invite your representative over to your house. Might be a great start. Maybe start big and think bigger. Run for office, please. Run for office. Run for school boards. Run for the library board. Run for state rep. Run for governor. Run for AG. Because until we are elected to the offices in this building and across the way, until we have judges sitting on the bench down the street, or until those seated in high-level positions, people with disabilities will have stalled progress. So go run, get involved, be seen, get to know people, make it so that leaders know you and you can pick up the phone and call them. Normalize disability in this building. The end result will be access for us all. And ironically, this morning, a quote popped up on my computer, and it seemed totally appropriate to share today. For those of you that are big West Wing fans, I was a huge West Wing fan. I still am. You might recognize it. It is not the battles we lose that bother me. It is the ones we don't suit up for. My message here today is suit up.
Nice.
When are you going to run for office?
We're doing self-introduction.
Self-introductions, okay.
Self-introductions, we're trying to just...
All right. I was invited up to speak. I'm not stealing the microphone. Thank you so much for that. I'm State Senator Matt Lesser. I am the co-chair of the Human Services Committee. And I will say that when you ran down that list of offices that people should run for, I was nervous for a second, but then gratified because you skipped over State Senate. So I am good. I just want to say what an incredible crowd there is today. I see lots of friends, lots of people I've had an opportunity to work with over the last few years, over the time I've served in office, on so many important issues. And we all have different issues that we're working on, but all together we can celebrate today the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it is important. It was important then, and it is at least as important now. And I frequently meditate on a line of former Vice President, U.S. Senator Hubert Humphrey, who said that the moral test of government is how the government treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children, those who are in the twilight of life, the elderly, and those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and people with disabilities. That is the moral test of government. And right now, we're not measuring up so high, not on the federal level at least. And you heard from Sheldon a minute ago about these new executive orders that came out that seemed designed to reinstitutionalize folks, to come up with a system we had in this country decades ago where our policy towards people with disabilities was, you're inconvenient, we don't want to have to see you. That is abhorrent. And the fact that we as a country are headed in that direction should be repugnant, not just to everyone with disabilities, but to all decent Americans, because it runs contrary to our values as citizens of this country. And to look at our two great social programs, which are also celebrating a birthday today, the Medicare program and the Medicaid program, which I think everyone in this room knows are critical programs for people with disabilities, and to see them not as bedrock promises to the American people, but as funding that can be looted to pay for a tax cut for the most wealthy people in this country, is also important. So what do we have to do? Well, in this building, we have a responsibility for the folks in this state. And that responsibility is to stand up, to fight back, to fight for all of you. I want to say we have made some progress the last couple of years on a lot of things because we have kept moving forwards at the same time the country has moved backwards. So I can just run down a short list, but we've gone just on a few things. Right, we have moved forward on services for the deafblind, the hard of hearing. We have worked to strengthen our abuse and neglect system, looking at the Department of Developmental Disabilities. We this year just passed a big law strengthening the Katie Beckett waiver program for children, making sure that we're shortening that wait list, helping kids with serious illnesses access the services that they need. We have focused an awful lot of time and effort on improving services for people who rely on wheelchairs, making sure that Connecticut has the strongest wheelchair law in the country, the only wheelchair law in the country, but a law designed to make sure that people can get timely repairs of the wheelchairs because folks were waiting over 100 days to get their wheelchair serviced in this state. And I've been trying to get my head around what that entails. But the idea of needing a wheelchair to go to your job or the supermarket or the store or even the restroom and not being able to do that because your wheelchair is your everything and then having to wait 100 days, what kind of employer would ever accept that? And then we've also worked to strengthen our MedConnect program, which allows people on Medicaid to go in the workforce and earn a living and not have to choose between their benefits and the ability to provide for family. We've done a lot of things to move things forward. And at the same time, the federal government has been slashing Medicaid. And a report from the Kaiser Family Foundation found that the impact on Connecticut's Medicaid program could be as much as $13 billion over the next 10 years. $13 billion. And you heard from Sheldon, where does the money in Medicaid go? Covering kids is pretty cheap, right? Covering childless adults is pretty cheap. The bulk of the cost that Connecticut experiences in the program is through our Husky Seat program, and that disproportionately goes to people with disabilities. So when folks say, no, there are no cuts baked in that program, there are cuts, and they are aimed at the most vulnerable folks in this state. So at a time when the federal government has been slashing that program, we put in tens of millions of dollars this year into raising Medicaid rates, because it's not enough to have a program in theory. You have to be able to go see a provider to get the services that you're entitled to. We have some big decisions going forward to make sure that we're keeping our commitment to people with disabilities. We are going to be in special session in this building in the month of September. And the question is, are we going to go and accept those federal cuts? Are we going to whittle down services? Or are we going to make a continued commitment to the whole state, recognizing that we're all in this together, whether you're rich or poor, or black or white or Asian or Latino, no matter what zip code you're in or what corner of the state, whether you're a person with disabilities or not, or what your disability is, we are all in this together. And we have a choice about whether or not to make new investments to make up that difference, and that might mean intercepting some federal tax cuts and saying, no, we need that money to go into services. Those are the questions that we're going to be wrestling with. But I will say that fight that was essential 35 years ago is as essential today. And we have moved forward as a country. We've also now moving backwards, but we have to keep our commitment going. The one thing I will say that has impressed me as we've gone through all these fights, as we go through this, is just looking around the room. Because I have had the opportunity to work with so many of you. I have been impressed by many of you. I have been intimidated by quite a few of you. I'm scared of yet more, and a good one. But I know that if I were going into a fight, I couldn't think of a room where I see more folks in there who have incredible skills, incredible strength, and incredible stories. And by leading with those stories and your own experiences, I know that we're going to do the right thing, because you are all some incredible advocates, and we're going to keep this law that's been in place for 35 years, and then we're going to figure out how to strengthen our laws in Connecticut to make sure that we can continue to do right. Back to you at this time. Thank you very much.
Everyone. I'm Jillian Gilchrist, co-chair with Senator Lesser on the Human Services Committee, and just so happy to be here today to recognize this important anniversary. Before becoming a state representative, I did advocacy. And what brought me into advocacy was my passion for women's health and safety. And so you can find me on any given day reading a book about the women's movement, because that's where my passion and interest lies. And so getting to learn today, and also I went on the website, so thank you, about the history of the ADA and the disability rights movement is incredibly interesting and impactful. And I'll say 35 years is actually pretty young. And so there's still such a tremendous amount of work to go, and not surprising that we've only gotten to the place we've gotten to. Also, I'll say in a movement, as we all know, there's ebbs and flows. And so right now, we're in an ebb down, and that hurts. But what history has shown us is that when we are experiencing a time like that in a movement, it brings new people, new voices to the movement. It enrages some of us, right? Gets us fired up again, and makes us stronger coming out the other side to push for the things we should have already have and deserve. I also, in hearing that final speech, you said you didn't know what you were going to say. Well, you nailed it. Thank you. Connection. That's the word that sticks with me, because I want to thank each and every one of you for making that connection with me. I don't have a personal connection to the disability community. And I was 8 years old in 1990. And I've never shared this publicly before, but I'm gonna in this room because it feels, I remember being told as a child, if we saw someone with a disability, not to look. Don't stare. And it took me a lot of time to unpack that and what that did to me and made me think about people with disabilities. And getting to be a state representative and get invited into people's homes to learn from them and to get to know them on a level I never would have if I had just looked down, means the world to me. And please know that you will have an advocate for the rest of your life, because I will continue to fight as hard as you fight, because you have educated me and you'll continue to educate me, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm State Senator Jeff Gordon, 35th District. It's a tough act to follow my two colleagues, but I will try. I remember when the ADA was signed into law, and I could see very much before I became a senator its impact. I'm also a doctor, so when we talk about things that the ADA required to do, just what I saw in hospital and medical offices has been tremendous to give literally access to people to get care. And we continue to fight for that. But one of the things that I've always marveled at with the American with Disabilities Act and efforts surrounding it are people like you. Because ADA would not have happened if there wasn't advocacy in the first place. I don't think the Congress just would have magically somehow created it and then got it through the process and signed it. And people like you who have been advocating and supporting and fighting for it all of these 35 years. And as we know, it just doesn't mean that you can rest on your laurels now and say, look what's been done. We can look back, and there's been quite achievements, but I'm looking forward and see what do we do in the next 35 years and beyond. And seeing a room full of all of you and everybody else that I hear from, just not as a physician, but as a senator, who continues to advocate for the ADA, continues to advocate for people's rights, to give people literally physical access, but more than that, give people opportunities in their life. That is amazing to see the support that has been kept up over 35 years and to see that that's going to continue to move forward. We know you can't win every fight every year, but there's a lot that one can continue to advocate for. And to see and hear from all of you, I know you will continue to push us as legislators to do the right thing and to keep fighting and working for you. I made a commitment early on as a senator to be part of that fight as best as I can, just as I did throughout my medical career for close to 35 years at this point also. And I'll continue to do that to see what we can do, because we know that when we continue to give you and many others who have all sorts of different, just not disabilities, but abilities in life, the opportunities to learn, to grow, to work, participate, to thrive, and hopefully succeed in life in whatever they wish to do, that makes all of us better, just not our state, but our communities and our country. And that's why I'm looking to the future to see what more can we do, not move back, but move forward. And I know all of you share that, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So I appreciate all of you being here and the work that you do, and keep it going strong and keep all of us and others in this building on our toes, which I know you will do. And happy to be working with you, and very proud to be here today with you and to celebrate the American with Disabilities Act, especially on its 35th year milestone. So thank you very much.